Greetings, Dr. Joseph Martin here once again. This is Hyperborea, the Earth evolution based on spiritual science. This is part 2 of 7 videos, all just introductions to the 7 different stages of humanity. We are presently in the 21st century, the end of the 5th stage, as also the Hopi would say. The indigenous peoples. Part 1 was Pangaea or Gaia, and a discussion of Polaris or the Polarian, the first civilization of human-like species, souls on Earth. This is actually then Hyperborea, the second stage. Now we need to make certain that we understand that there are parallel evolutions going on at the same time as humans are coming down through the vibrational levels to get ready to take on a physical body. In our solar system, now we know the universe, this universe is about 16 billion years old, and we can say that our Earth and our solar system, perhaps because it's a little farther flung out from the center source or the Big Bang, is about 5.63 billion years old. Well, at the same time as the planets were evolving out of the matrix of the sun, the etheric energy that the sun is, that pure light source, we could call it the Christ consciousness, the planets were taking their time over billions of years to evolve out of the matrix of the ether of the sun and create their own, first of all, gaseous little planets. And as those gases turn to fiery liquids like lava and so on, for instance, we know the Earth is made only of molten lava inside. This is a very fiery planet. It's just the outer surface of the crust that's cooled down and makes it feel like it's a watery and an earthy planet. In fact, it's all fire and lava inside. And at the same time, our particular moon was also densifying and cooling down out of what used to be part of the center of the sun. Now, so as this was happening, the Earth itself, which is a mediator, if you like, between the sun and the sun being a light body that's full of helium and gas and energy and heat, and the moon being a cold body that's just a dense body that, as far as we know, sustains no living being, perhaps not even a few, only maybe extraterrestrial bacteria that come to it. And the Earth is a mediator in between, a cooling down object that in fact is still fiery inside, like the sun, its originator, because we came from the sun, the Earth itself. But on the outside now is densifying and becoming a cooling crust like the moon. So let's go look at all of this as well. While the Earth is becoming denser and cooler and creating more, in the chemical table, we know that over time, that with the processes of Earth and evolution and geology and cooling and so on, that the minerals and the metals within the Earth become more complex and more densified. And that allows for then more plants to be growing in different species of plants, and then of course animals and eventually humans in a physical form. This is all happening simultaneously. It's the decreasing temperature is the key here to the ancestors coming here from another higher realm, higher dimension, and also having been here in the Polarian or the Polaris phase simply as etheric, causal, astral beings. And these astral souls, think of them like mother ancestral human soul beings. They're mothers in the sense that an astral body, the definition, the experience of being an astral soul is everything is feeling, everything is emotion, everything is connectedness, everything is an understanding of spirit. It's a hearing with your whole being, your whole soul, intuitively of all that is in terms of the perfection of the spirit. And in that situation, there's a feeling of a unity of soul with all that is. So certainly all the ancestral soul mothers that came to this earth to eventually want to take on a physical existence, they in fact were feeling the oneness of whatever that ancestral soul group might be. Now in other videos we will look at whether these beings came from Sirius A or Sirius B star system galaxy, or Alpha Centauri, or Zubanel Ganubi, or the Pleiades, and so on. But our concern here is not that at this point. What we're concerned to know is what was the experience like for these astral ancestors before they had physical bodies? And this is what we call the first root race of planet Earth. These are the ones that I described in the last video of Polaris, or the Polarian root race. I wanted to give you more an example of what their feeling and experience was like in this video, rather than just give you some time orientation. These beings, these ancestors, they knew they were eternal. They got their substance from the ether and the prana of the sun. They were filled with light and filled with feeling. They felt they were one. And basically, they were like plants, and this is a metaphor, because they asexually reproduced. Out of the mother ancestral soul of a root race, say from the Pleiades or wherever they came from, they were able to simply create little seeds or seedlets of the original mother soul of that human species that came to the earth. And those could take form as individuals, not necessarily replicas, but they all understood and were part and parcel of the consciousness of that same one soul. Now we have remnants in the psyche and the anthropological awareness of indigenous peoples today who still remember what it was like to be those early souls in Polaris before Lemuria, which is the substance of our next video, because those plants as well came from a mother plant spirit, and they all understood that those plants shared the same mother spirit. For instance, you know very well that the indigenous peoples, particularly in the Incans, understand this, and the Peruvians. As well, animal souls had one mother spirit, and we still, as indigenous peoples, understand that there's an animal spirit soul or medicine for every animal, whether it's a wolf soul spirit or bear and so on. Humans seem to have forgotten this, but that I'm getting too close to the present before we need to look at other things as well. These souls, these ancient ancestral souls, were completely clairvoyant. Of course, that's what it means to be astral, and that's what it means to be a soul. You're completely clairvoyant and aware and knowing of all and everything around you, not just within your own soul mother group, but within all other species. So other human-like or human ancestral soul groupings from other star systems or galaxies and far-flung parts of this universe. And also our souls of our Polarian ancestors understood innately and intuitively the plant medicine soul spirits and the animal medicine soul spirits. So that's why we have these creation stories and mythologies all over the world of our ancestors being able to talk to the rocks, rock spirits, the mineral spirits, the plant and animal spirits, and be one with them because they were. Now, there's a very interesting thing in evolution that we're moving into now, what we call the second root race of Earth, and that is the Hyperboreans, and that's the substance of this video. I just did want to give you a little prolegomena introduction to how we got to the second stage. In this second stage, the Earth itself is becoming denser, more material, less just like fiery lava and water, but actually more of a solid material crust and continents on the surface. We did talk about Pangaea, and of course there were other continents as well. And so what's happening at this time, concomitant with the fact that the moon is becoming more solid and the earth is becoming the mediator, we have human souls coming into the fleshly body and taking on, of course, mineral, plant, animal, human bodies, because we have all of this within our biochemistry, our anatomy, our physiology. We know we have reptilian brain, the triune brain, the reptilian brain, the animal brain, the limbic brain, the feeling brain, the soul, and the neocortex, the human soul, the human brain, I should say. In this process, what is being experienced is that no longer were these astral souls of Polarians able to maintain their full soul experience. They were being shut out, as it were, by being intricately embodied within a physical, chemical, biochemical body that was just pure physical matter that had its own needs and necessities of itself that were apart from the soul. So the soul actually started to split off and remove itself from outside of what had been its own body and start to exist about 6 inches just over the top of the physical body of these early Hyperboreans, our ancestors. And so what's happening is that because the soul could not operate and be in charge of the physical body because of the constituents of the physical body and its own laws, the soul had only 1 or 2 recourses to get to speak to the body. One of them was through dreams and the unconscious and visions. Sometimes the body didn't open to that. And another was with the inner world. The soul had to create its own series of stages of inner life, and we're still evolving with our inner life processes. I'll get to that. This is extremely important for you to remember, the inner life stages of evolution. And so some of the organs, previously the hearing organ was the whole astral body, but now as the physical body densified and became its own matter, we had to develop organs of hearing, which are central to our way of living in the world. And for our first time as the soul separate from the physical body, it had to develop what we call perception. That is, it used to feel like it was one with all and everything, but when it became separated from the physical body, it had to understand that it needed to be an observer and it needed to have perceptions of things outside of itself now, because the soul was outside and hidden from the physical world in a way and needed to perceive everything around it. And so it developed 2 organs, the hearing for things outside, like animal movement and waves and so on, crashing, but also the sense of touch became the next organ, and that's the sensation organ. And touch, as we still know, is around the entire physical body. It's not its own unique organ. Every part of our skin is a touch organ of perception. And as this happened then, in a way, all the soul feelings that the soul used to have before it had a physical body became hidden and became secreted and became unconscious. No longer was the physical body of the human able to be sad and be happy and joyful and have those definite, extremely beautiful, well-defined and well-notified experiences of emotion. They all became lost and buried as the soul kind of either hid inside the body or left and went outside the body, was observing itself and observing the physical body. This created a serious problem in a couple of ways for the physical body of the human in Hyperborea. One was the earth was continuing to cool itself. And as it continued to cool itself, the physical human body started to cool itself. And if it was unable to adapt, it would easily die, and the whole root race, the second root race of Hyperboreans, would have died out. But through extraordinary circumstances, the soul, through the capacity to develop some of the chi and prana from the sun that it could still bring in, it was able to create certain organ systems, the liver, the gallbladder, the kidneys, the heart, and so on. But even more to the point, the biochemistry of the mitochondria of the cells to create its own internal combustion system of energy production. Through the use of food, air, and water, it could then also create itself through what we call the Krebs cycle, or the production of food transferred to the Krebs cycle into the mitochondria through what we call adenosine triphosphate reduced to adenosine diphosphate, thereby releasing a phosphate molecule, which actually is pure light and pure energy, to heat the internal body so it didn't die of cold, hypothermia. This ATP-ADP cycle we know very well in biochemistry is central to the adaptation of the Hyperboreans as they found themselves in a physical earth body. And therein lies a message about our adaptability. However, there was a far more essential and crucial role which has changed human history and is still a conundrum for philosophy, world religion, ontology, epistemology, and actually the mystical process of the soul trying to regain its immortality. And what is this issue? The fact is that when humans, the soul humans from the Polarian age, the first root race, came to the second root race, the Hyperboreans, for the first time having a physical body, they realized that they could no longer germinate like seeds, like plants. They had to find sexual organs that had to be made in the physical body. This is all in Plato, by the way, about how they needed to sexually reproduce in order to survive. No longer could little soulets just kind of emerge as other astral souls as they did in Polarian times. Now in Hyperborean times, they had to take on a physical body and they needed to reproduce sexually, so they needed the split, the division of genders, which is still a crucial issue today, isn't it? Was created with the female sex organs and the male sex organs. They had to reproduce sexually, or the whole root race, the second root race, would have died out. Obviously, they did this, as we know. But what this caused in the outfall of all this, as we know from psychology, sex and death are always interrelated in the deep human psyche, consciously and unconsciously. And what this means is this: that brought physical death to the human species, Homo sapiens. The soul knew it was immortal and eternal, but it couldn't get this across and didn't have that integrity and link, that conscious link, or even a physical chemical link to the physical body any longer. So the physical body would run down, it would age, it would get cold, the biochemistry would not function so well, and eventually, in short years or long years, the physical body would die. Well, this created a huge psychological and obviously collective anthropological concern for the Hyperboreans, because they needed to have sexual reproduction, they needed to heat their bodies internally, and they needed to use, obviously, warmth like fire, the introduction of fire, clothing, shelter, caves, and so on, fur wraps around themselves to stay warm, because we will get to the stage when we see that this earth has had so many different ice ages, and it's surprisingly miraculous that our ancestors have survived all these ice ages. And this is a big shout out to all the rest of you in Canada and America and England today who are in sub-zero temperatures down to the minus 30s and 40s in January 2013. We have not resolved this issue yet. Back to Hyperborea. The whole introduction of physical death then created the greatest split from the soul and the physical body. But there's even a third more important element, which is what we call in the tradition, whether it's Buddhism or anthroposophical tradition, is kama, or body wishes or body desires. Now that the physical body had its own life, separate from the soul, and it could do what it wanted, it was like a robotic material, physical biochemical organism, it created its own desires. Well, yes, of course, the need for water and food and thirst and food But sex, it needed to have the desire for sex or it could not reproduce and would die off. But more than that, there were other desires, desires of attachment that would attach it to the physical body for eternity and never be able to break free again from this physical existence. It would take it down and down and down as the millions of years have come from the Hyperborean age to this fifth post-Atlantean root race here. The physical body and the consciousness within the physical body has created more of a densification and a complexification and an inertness of the needs of the physical body. Not just sex and lust and hunger and all those things, but it's even more than that. It's the need for material things. The physical body perceives now, because the soul no longer feels one with everything, the physical body perceives that it is separate from all the objects of desire outside. So it desires this car, this lobster, this food, this, lust for this person. Whatever the objects are, they're objects of desire. And of course, because of this in the Hyperborean age, we've had to have had spiritual masters for tens of hundreds of thousands of years to come and say, look, you guys, you're stuck in the material world. Your soul is not operative. The spark of light is very dim within you. You've created a dark time within your physical body. You've forgotten who you are. You need to be released. You need to remember who you are, that you're a spark of light of the divinity of all that is, that needs to reunite with the central source spark, starting with our sun here, the light. And of course, we're aware that we are missing the light. We all get this SAD, seasonal affective disorder in the winter, if we miss the light. Our body and our soul knows we miss the light, but we've become so dense that we're so desirous of territory and land and other people's natural resources, and we're willing to tear the earth up to get these natural resources to keep us warm or drive our cars or whatever it is we think we need. And all these external desires are insatiable. And we're driven, this is it's a psychological, physical kind of addiction, which has turned into a collective illness, if I can use that word, in the best possible valuation of it. And this has been going on since Hyperborean times. And when was that? Well, we're talking about over 1 billion years. Because there are many earlier societies, as you can well witness from my sharing my experiences and knowing with you, that anthropology and archaeology and physical anthropology have yet to discover. And part of my role as an anthropologist and as a scientist is to bring this to the awareness of all my colleagues in the scientific worlds and, of course, the general public. That this is, in fact, the truth. This is how we've evolved. And there's more on many, many things we could say in all of this. So, sex and death and the need to keep ourselves warm, these are three of the fallouts, if you like, or the outcomes, trying to put this in positive, neutral language, to the ancestral astral soul beings who prefigured ourselves, who brought us into the physical form. And we're in the physical form, and yes, there's a lot of grace and beauty about being in the physical form, but we don't know how stuck we are in this. The fourth thing that happened in the Hyperborean age, soulets could not be just germinated like little seeds and float down to the surface of the earth any longer. We had to have reproduction and so on. But it also meant that the physical body would die. So the only way that the soul could get a chance to come back and to redeem itself and find its way back to the central source light is it had to take astral rebirth in the next physical body of a daughter or a son that came out of another physical mother. So that's where we have the whole origin of the notion of reincarnation, of souls that had to keep taking multiple physical human incarnations to try to remember to wake up and try to remember that this is just a physical overcoat. It's not the real thing. It's an epiphenomenon of the spirit, the soul, the highest consciousness of all that is as a unity. So that's why the understanding of reincarnation and the fact that your soul is yet here again, taking on this next physical overcoat. And the Buddha has said we've all had millions of human physical incarnations on planet Earth, let alone other places, in order to try to wake up and remember as we move back out of the dark ages of Kali Yuga, most recently, towards another golden age. Well, that's all we need to say at this time for the understanding of our second root race, the Hyperboreans, the second of 7 races. We're in the 5th one right now, and there are 6th and 7th future races for us to come. We will eventually get there in all these introductory videos. A lot of this material is so dense, so complex and interesting. We obviously will be doing more videos on each of the 7 root races of ancestral humanity and earth evolution. All my love and blessings to you, Dr. Joseph Martin. Onwards, inwards, upwards. All my heart love.